You probably know that I am a huge fan of solo practice. I've made videos about it, I've given you drills, I've given you routines, and I plan to do that a lot more once the lockdown is finished. I truly and honestly believe that solo practice is one of the best ways to improve. You have to improve because you can't hit the ball waywardly, you can't hit it badly, you've got to hit it back to yourself. You get to hit twice as many shots, maybe more, maybe up to 3 times as many shots per period of time than you do if you're playing with a partner. Now, of course, I'm not saying that's the only thing you need to do. Of course, you're going to need to do drills and fitness work and conditioned games and all sorts of other things. But solo practice is one of those things that every ambitious squash player should be doing. And of course, that's super easy for me to say. Go and hit the ball. But what do? I mean, you've probably got questions, about solo practice. Now, I'm not going to answer those questions now. Well, maybe some of them. But what I am going to do is I'm going to give you 5 things that you can do that will improve your solo practice. Number 1, you must have a plan. Never walk onto a court and say, right, what shall I do? No. You've got to go on with a plan. Now, what that plan is almost less important than how good the plan is. Having a bad plan is probably better than having no plan. Now, there are times when you can go on court and you can just say, I'm just going to hit the ball, see what happens. Fine. But if you're going in a training session and you're going to say, I really want to improve my squash, that's what you should be doing. You should have a plan. Now, where do you get that plan, Philip? What do I do, Philip? I can hear those questions. Well, I've given you some. I've got at least 3 or 4 drill routines that you can do. There are probably other channels that have got other routines as well. I don't know. There are definitely other channels who show you how to do one particular exercise, but all you need to do is say, I'm going to go on and I'm going to do some straight drives to the back, then I'm going to go forward a little bit, I'm going to do some volleys, then I'm going to hit a few boasts, and you can even do boast and drive on your own. It's a little bit boring, but you can even do that. Going to do some cross courts, going to do some service returns, might even do some serves. Yes. You can do serves on your own. Okay, you have to go and get the ball, but you can use a couple of red dots in your hand. Anyway, make sure you have a plan, that you know what you're going to do. And the first few times that you do this, you'll probably under or overestimate how long it takes, unless you use one of my plans, which have got set routines in. And you might find that you need to adjust the numbers, or you're not sure how long you should do each one. Fine. But have something written down, something that you can refer to. And my solo drills have like a page that you can print, so you know what you can be doing. Stick it on the back of the door or something like that, and you can refer to it. So that's number 1. Make sure you have a plan about what you're going to do on that individual session. And ideally, your plan should not just cover one session, but maybe the next 10 sessions and variations and what you really need to improve on. Have a plan. Number 2, put pressure on yourself. Now imagine that you do a volley routine. You go to the front of the court, you hit some, and we're really quite close to the wall now, you hit some straight forehand volleys close to the side wall, and then you move a little bit and you hit the ball front wall, side wall, front wall, front wall, side wall, side wall, front wall. Okay, so it comes back at you, forehand, backhand, forehand, backhand. Then you move to the middle of the court, forehand, backhand, forehand, backhand, forehand, backhand. Then you move to the other side, front wall, side wall, front wall, side wall, and then you finish with some backhand straight volleys. Now imagine if you said to yourself, I'm going to do 10 of these in each position. If I make a mistake, back to complete 0. Whoa. That has suddenly got a lot harder. That has suddenly got a lot more effective. Why? Because when you're playing in a match, if you make a mistake, there is a consequence. When you're solo practicing, if you make a mistake, there is no consequence unless you make it a consequence. I can tell you, I used to do 100 of these in each position, and when I was getting to the last straight volleys and I was on about 50 or 60, I was nervous. I was nervous because I didn't want to have to go back and do it again. And that is the point. When you're practicing solo, make yourself feel some pressure. Make yourself be nervous so that it has an added element to when you play in real situations. Now, I said to myself, I'm going to do 100 in every one of those positions, and I'm not going to stop until I do them. Now, I was fortunate because I didn't have anybody like playing after me. I practiced in the morning. There was nobody coming after me. And if you've got a set period of time, that's maybe a little bit different. But I really didn't want to make the mistake. Now, I'm not suggesting you start with 100. Goodness me, no. You start with 10, and you start with maybe 2 or 3 different exercises, or you even just start with one exercise. I'm going to stand on the court, I'm going to hit the ball into the service box 10 times, and if I don't do it, I'm going to keep doing it until I do it, within reason. We'll come back to that. So what you need to do there is, if you can add some pressure on yourself, this is the mental pressure, it will benefit you more than just if you hit those solo drives. And I'm sure you see that. If you're just sort of on court, you're not even paying any attention. Yeah, I've done 150 straight drives. It doesn't make any difference. Better to do 10 really good ones than 150 that's no good. Put pressure on yourself. Number 3. Keep some notes. Now, in a future video, I'm going to be talking about 5 ways that ambitious squash players can use bullet journaling to improve themselves. Now, if you don't know what bullet journaling is, don't worry, I'll explain that in the video. But what you should do is as a very basic minimum, you should keep a note of what you've done. Now, how you do that is up to you. You could do it on an Excel spreadsheet, you could do it in a notebook, you could do it on just a few pieces of paper. But what you do is you go on court, you've decided what you're going to do, because you remember, tip number 1, have your plan, and then you tick them as you finish them, or you tick them at the end of the day. Make any notes that you might have, and they don't have to be extensive. You don't have to pour your heart out into your diary. Just have to say, I found the forehand volleys after the backhand drives quite difficult, so make sure that you do that combination again. Because I don't want to get into too many details here, but you should be changing the order that you do things. And anybody who's done any exercise will know that if you get used to a set of exercises, for example, you always do bicep curls, then you do lateral raises, and then you do some shoulder presses. If you change the order within reason, that can help you because you're not always becoming too accustomed. But if you find that your forehand volley is great, but it's not so good after you've done backhand drives, then you need to keep that combination. You need to find out what the reason for that is and do it more often, so that, in a real rally, you hit a backhand and then a forehand, you've got to recreate that. So make some notes, just some general notes about what you did and maybe any feelings, and it really will help you. It'll take you to the next level, which is really what the next tip is going to be. Tip number 4, take it seriously. Now, I've kind of alluded to that earlier on about, just hitting the ball without concentrating or making some notes, but take your solo practice seriously. Solo practice is not something you do because your opponent hasn't turned up or because you're early. Solo practice is something you do because it is really good for you and your squash. So, what that means is, it means heating up properly, making sure that you are hot and you're ready to go, and you've stretched with statically if necessary, dynamically where you pretend to do the movements. You should be sweating before you hit the ball. I've said that 100 times. Here's number 101. You should be sweating before you begin hitting the ball. Take those sessions as seriously as you would a pairs practice or a match. Because if you don't, you're not getting the maximum benefit from them. You will benefit, but not as much as if you took it seriously. And taking it seriously is not just about heating up and cooling down. It's about booking courts specifically for this. And I will make a video soon to show you that you can do solo practice with a partner. Okay, that sounds a bit strange, but maybe you don't want to pay the money, and I fully understand that, for being on court alone. Well, 2 of you could do it. No, don't do drills when you're together, or at least don't do all of the time. Use some of the time to do solo practice because it's still good. It's not something you do because you don't have a partner. You do it because it's great to do. So you can do solo practice with somebody on the court, so you can share the cost of the court. But take it seriously. Can't stress that enough. Tip number 5. Don't do any exercise for too long. I'm going to be talking about this in a future video, a completely new series called Training Concepts. I'm going to be talking about muscle memory. Now, what this means is, and I'll introduce it very quickly, is don't think that doing an exercise for 5 minutes is great or good. Therefore, doing an exercise for 25 minutes is better. It is not necessarily true. Imagine you're working on hitting the ball into the nick and you start hitting the ball into the nick, but your arm's getting a little bit tired. What's going to happen when your arm gets tired? You're not going to have good technique, but you carry on doing it because you think that doing something for a long time is really good. No, it's actually worse because then you're reinforcing the idea that the bad technique is what you want to do. You've probably heard the phrase, practice makes perfect. It's wrong. You've probably heard the phrase, practice makes permanent. That's partly true because it depends on if you do the same thing all of the time. This is the best one, and Graham Stevenson gave me this one. Perfect practice makes perfect. You need to do an exercise long enough that you get benefit from it, but no more. Now, how do you know? Well, that's a whole different topic. But essentially, it's better for you to do lots of short little exercises than to do something for too long. I used to know a professional player who told me that when he was younger, he used to do 3 hours straight drives on one side, and then in the afternoon, 3 hours straight drives on the backhand side. Okay. Absolutely crazy, and I've heard other people do that. Do not think the more the better. It does not work that way, and that's why my training drills, my routines have got this intermittent stage where you do something for 50 or 100 shots or a minute and then you go on to do something else. If you want to do something for a period of time, you can break it down into smaller segments because there's a physical element as well. I recognize that. There's a patience and a mindfulness element to long exercises, but you shouldn't do for example, if you say I'm going to go and do a solo practice, I've got like half an hour on court, I'm going to do 15-minute forehands and 15-minute backhands. No, don't do that. Do 6 different exercises of 5 minutes, something like that, or 10 different exercises of 3 minutes, something like that. So that's the last tip, and you might say that was part of the plan, but sometimes it's not because it's like a completely separate issue. Don't do any exercise for too long. The moment that you feel that you're getting technically tired or you notice a decrease in the quality, stop. That's it. Those are the tips. On the screen at the moment is a subscription button. If and only if you think my content is useful, please consider subscribing. There is also a list of videos that I think that you might find interesting, 5 things probably, and a video that YouTube thinks is a good fit for you based on what you've been watching. And remember, do something every single day to improve your squash. See ya.